Hello everyone, welcome to another Widnes Rugby Chat. We're on episode 6, a bit of an impromptu episode this one after the events of this week. I've managed to drag Ian back for another film, and I know we said we wanted you back, but I didn't expect you to be back this soon, Ian.
Absolutely, James, and neither did I. I think it was going to be coming back in the space of a couple of days, but
Mad week.
Absolutely, mad week.
What do you want to do? So where should we start, I suppose? Should we go in chronological order, and we'll start with Anthony Gelling?
Yeah.
So I think it was Tuesday. Was it Tuesday or Monday this week where it was Tuesday, wasn't it? Well, it started on Monday because obviously it came out on Monday that Catalan had registered or attempted to register Anthony Gelling with the French Federation, which sort of started the ball rolling on the rumour mill. And then on the Tuesday, I think a reputable French journalist said that he'd seen Gelling training with Catalan, and then I think in the afternoon we got the statement from Widnes. And within around, well, I think did Gelling tweet first he was going to do a Q&A?
Yeah, I think he did. I don't know what Widnes comms people will be thinking about that, but it's a bit of an own goal, really, but in my opinion, anyway.
Yeah, I mean, so Gelling did his Q&A, and then the statement came out where basically Widnes was saying they're aware of the reports that he's with Catalan or training with Catalan or whatever, but that he's still contracted to Widnes, and they're still expecting him to report to pre-season training. What was your take on all of that?
Well, I think we can sum it up very succinctly to say it was all a bit of a mess, to be honest with you. I don't think it's done either of the parties, and I'll probably say, let's roll in Catalans in this as well, because their hands are looking a little bit dirty as well. Bruno Onsantiente from The Independent, he, as you say, he's a very reputable journalist, and he wouldn't be getting his facts wrong on stuff like this. So something, is it untoward? Am I right in saying untoward? But something a little bit iffy, if I can put it in Widnesian terms, has certainly happened. Then Gelling goes and does this Q&A on Twitter, gets fans excited, and then he kind of deflates others, but it's all up in the air. No one knows exactly what's going on, and I'm sure the lad was saying about he's got visa issues with his family. That may be the case, but
It's not the right forum to...
Well, it's not.
But I mean, I think ultimately he said that he didn't... I think somebody asked him, does he see himself playing for Widnes in 2019, and he said no. I mean, he was quite firm with that. I think the whole situation surrounding Gelling has probably been badly managed, by... I mean, I guess I have a bit more sympathy with the club now than maybe I did this time last week, only because ultimately the fact of the matter is Widnes have signed Gelling.
Yeah.
None of us really know what the contract states.
Yeah.
None of us really trust to a degree what James Rule says sometimes, because there has been issues in the past where he said things and perhaps the opposite's being true.
Yeah.
As far as he was concerned, Gelling was going to come and play in the Championship, and you would imagine that if the contract hadn't been to play in the Championship, then Widnes probably would have come out and said that was the case, such as being the length of time, between the end of the season and now. But the whole family thing, so it would appear that Gelling would come over. Well, I mean, obviously, again, it's a thing of how much do we trust Gelling, but Gelling's effectively implying that he would have come over in Championship if his family could have got a visa.
Yeah.
But then at the same time, I'm sort of thinking, well, what about when he signed? When he signed in July, was he not aware then that the family would struggle to get a visa? Is that not a due diligence that should be done before you sign?
Definitely no, and let's be quite kind of frank on this. Gelling was coming all the way back in June to a Championship club, and he should have had his own house in order. Maybe Widnes should have done the spot checks a little bit deeper. I don't know the ins and outs of it, but wrapping it up, quite quickly, James. He's not going to be in Widnes colours next year, and it's debatable, highly unlikely that he's ever going to play for Widnes again, in my opinion, because he's going to sign for someone, probably Catalans. It's likely to be Catalans. You can get visas a little bit more easy there. There's a few more loopholes, I'm told, that you can get people in and out there. And that Catalan team, it's going to be all for the better, because they're getting a very, very capable player. We all know that. He was a good lad at Wigan, very strong running winger or centre, and it's just a bit of hard cheese on Widnes that he's not going to be playing in Championship. But it kind of sums up the kind of the anarchy and situation going on at Widnes, really, because no one knows what's going on, really.
Yeah, is it? I mean, I suppose it's very convenient for Gelling that Catalan are there, I suppose, in many ways, because in theory, you won't be able to sign for any other Super League club for the same reason that he can't play for Widnes, basically, and he's just landed on his feet a little bit that Catalan are there and obviously interested in signing him.
Yeah, definitely, and Steve McNamara's a very astute coach. He's been around the block a long time, and he will have been advised, I'm sure, to say if it is Gelling and he can get him over, everything he's been training like we already discussed, and it'll probably end up there, to be honest with you. And that's a decent 3/4 signing for them.
Before we move on to some other things, where do you stand on the whole family thing? We're aware of players who are playing over here and the families are in Australia and whatever. Is it a valid excuse? In the modern day and age for a professional sportsman? I suppose everyone can make their own choice, and if that's the choice he's going to make, then fine. But if that's stopping you from fulfilling the contract you've signed, should there be a little bit more of a compromise? I don't know.
For me, he would have been on a very handsome contract and sold at Widnes. Some big figures we're talking here if he would have been coming over, and it goes with the territory. For me, if you put your name to the contract, which he has, he should technically be over here. I don't think the visa issue with him personally. So, in all honesty, Widnes fans might feel a little bit aggrieved that he's not coming over because, Widnes hadn't signed his family, and all that sounds really harsh, but that's the top and bottom of it. He put his name to the contract, he should be over it. So it's a sorry situation really for Widnes, but I think Kieran Birtle just got to look elsewhere. And if there's £100,000 to play with, and those are the figures which I believe are being bandied around, then you could get quite a lot for that in the Championship, couldn't you?
Yeah, I mean, I suppose it puts Widnes in a difficult position because what you do, I mean, you've got presumably you've got a piece of paper here that says, right, we've got a contract with you, but then at the same time, you've got your own budgets, your own salary cap. Widnes could play hardball and say, well, we're not releasing you. Yeah. But then what's the end goal to that situation? And then, but then at the same time, they could say, well, do we want a fee? But then, how long will that take? And obviously, if we don't feel like Gelling's coming now, they're going to have to replace him somehow. And obviously, the longer this sort of saga drags on, the longer it's going to take for them to come to a solution there.
Yeah, absolutely, and of course seek a replacement because, as we know, Widnes probably needed a number 3 and a number 4 in their side, so it's not just one centre we're looking at, it's probably 2, and I think I noticed Christian Innie actually coming out on social media saying, isn't he going to stay, and he'll let people know. Well, thanks very much for letting us know, but I'd like to think the business should be done a little bit early from Widnes. Yeah,
I mean, you certainly with Innie now, we're what 2 months out at the end of the season, and you're sort of thinking, well, it's either a yes or no by now, surely.
It is.
You know what I mean? Even if the club have offered him less than what he wants and he's not accepting it, well, let's say, right, well, it's off the table, we're going to go somewhere else. We might touch upon players in a bit because obviously Leah announcing a shed load of players today. Stephen Marsh was one of them as well, so maybe touch on that after we've got through everything else. So then Wednesday, I think it came out that James Rule was he's resigning effectively as chief executive. There wasn't a definitive date on that. It seemed to imply he'd be gone by the start of the season after some sort of handover process. What do you make of that move?
Jeez, it was quite shock news, wasn't it, really? Because even though I thought that would have been the right decision, probably at the end of last season, I never thought it would be so forthcoming. So something's obviously happened behind the scenes. But that's a conversation between James, Steve O'Connor, and the other directors. Steve O'Connor, chairman now, I should say, which is something else which I'm sure you want to discuss. But the whole thing did come as a slight bit of a shock, but I think for some Widnes fans, they kind of got what they'd wished for. We all know Widnes was in that situation coming into the season where the fans weren't happy. we spoke last week about fan engagement being so low and that disconnect. A lot of people didn't like the way James operated, kind of rubbed people the wrong way. We can probably go back to when James got shut at Paul Hansbury. There was a big furore, extravaganza, call it what you want, about that kind of dismissal. Having Paul been there as a mascot, a lot of people kind of saw that as a very ruthless act, and I know rugby league's a business, and it is a business, but perhaps there was a little bit of room for sentiment there as well, and that guy did a good job in my opinion. I don't know the ins and outs of what went on there, but and I wouldn't want to comment on specific cases, but ultimately James is left, or he's leaving the building, and it could well be that the O'Connors follow him too.
Yeah, I mean, the thing with James Rule, and obviously I'd love at one point to maybe get him on and speak to him, because I feel like he got to a point where I think I said this last week, where I thought there was no way back for him. I think he got to a point where there was that much fan sort of aggro against him that there was no way back. There was no way he was ever going to claw it back. No. Now, obviously, you can look at how it's got to that point, and I think there are some things that maybe he gets blamed for that aren't his fault, but then I think he's not helped himself in some of the things that he's come out with and done. And like, you give that example where, I didn't know Paul Hansbury, and some people might say that as well, why are you talking about that? But I think it's fine to do things like that when you're in a big business and a big city club, but when you're a small community club like Widnes are, it's very difficult. But I just think even little things like obviously the way that fans and sponsors are being alienated, and I understand that there's obviously been budget restrictions and stuff that have probably held James Reel back, and he's probably ended up taking a bit of flack for other people, but I still think that the way it's all being handled could have been a lot better. I suppose one of the main questions is sort of why now. It's 2 months after we got relegated. It's last year survived relegation. We're in the lower league now, and it's like, what has triggered it to happen now rather than 2 months ago or even 12 months ago?
Well, I think it's a case of this is the straw what brought the camels back. I think in regards to James Reel, and let's face it. The fans did give him a real hard time. For them to be kind of rolling banners out and having social media campaigns to say, let's get James Reel out and Reel out, hashtag all this type of stuff. That's got to kind of take its own effect on a person, and maybe there's a little bit of that as well, because no one wants to be criticised. No one wants to be kind of judged a failure. But when you look at it, the past 2 years at Widnes has been a complete write-off in my opinion, and I've got to say a failure. When look at 2014, Widnes were on the real edge of something big, but from then on it's kind of spiralled out of control. And I mentioned the word like sleepwalking into relegation. James is an efficient operator. He's been around some big clubs. He would have known what has been coming, and
it's worth noting as well that the whole Reel, and I'm aware that there's fans, and I'd be happy to have them on here to speak to them. There's a few fans who are very defensive of, certainly of the protest side of the rule out, and some people feel like he's almost been hounded out of the club a bit like Dennis Ep6 was. But I think it's worth noting that something like rule out or that sort of thing, it doesn't just happen overnight.
Oh, no,
it's obviously been brewing. It's several, there's loads of examples we can reel off. The Wigan home game fiasco, the Kevin Brown saga, and it's almost like the lack of, I don't know whether it's a lack of transparency, whether it's a lack of connect with the fans or whatever, but it's not a case of, all the fans that are maybe pushing or were pushing the rule out stuff, as much as some other fans may see them as like, a bit of a lynch mob, it's like, it's been built up over such a long period of time.
Yeah, I just think Widnes people like straight talking, and they don't like BS, which is what a lot of people have claimed against James, and some of the rallying call stuff was getting a little bit too much. Some of the stuff in the local press saying you can come and get behind the side. I get all that, I understand it all, but issuing the rallying call every week turned out to be a bit of a stick beating process, in my opinion.
Yeah, because it was almost like the fans were being blamed, wasn't it?
It's not fair.
We'll maybe move on to the O'Connor thing now, but I think I was always a bit bugged by the fact that it was like, oh, we can't sign players until we have more members, because you're almost like preaching to the converted, really. Because I'm a bit like, well, the existing fans are not happy because you're not investing, but then you're basically saying to them, well, we can't sign anyone until somebody else joins. But then what's the motivation for somebody else to join? Because if I, as one person, come along and join, that's not going to make any difference in terms of signing. So that sort of leads in. So then the following day, we've then got the statement from Steve O'Connor, basically saying that they'd be happy, and obviously this is off the back of the Luke Backhouse interview, I guess, that the board of directors would be interested in gifting their shares to the right person or company or whatever.
Yeah, it's a real strange one, isn't it? Because they have Steve O'Connor, a real shrewd businessman who's made millions from a local transport company, sold out to Store-bought, done well for himself. You know, been a real kind of flag bearer for Widnes at the time. So when he came in, you know, we were all like, yeah, this is the right man for the job. Is he the right man for the job now? You know, the fans will kind of vote with their feet on that one, in my opinion. But with Steve, you know, he steps aside. He's let James Real do all the kind of the figurehead stuff, the mouthpiece of the business, if you like, and just when you come back into the picture, it's been a really interesting one to kind of keep an eye on, and I don't think we've seen the last of it here. There's got to be more communications coming out from the club. I think Steve realises that. He's got to claw it back a little bit and get fans on side, because at the moment, you know, with James Real still involved, there's still that disconnect, and you know, I think Steve needs to come and do a little bit of, you know, media interviews, whatever it may be, because you know, at the moment it's not really clear what the direction the club's going in.
Yeah, I mean, I'm a bit on the fence in terms of the whole O'Connor, Backhouse, whatever thing, because I think when Real resigned, I was thinking, oh well, if Steve O'Connor's done that, then maybe, you know, he's going to start looking at it again and figuring out what the club needs to do moving forward. I think the thing for me is, as much as it'd be great if someone waltzed along with loads of money, I don't think that's necessarily going to help Widnes. I know that sounds daft and everyone will be like, well, hang on, we had to sign players with money, but I think if you look at what Steve O'Connor's done, he came in and said, well, we need X number of fans, and obviously that's not happened, and now, while they'll blame the fans for that, I certainly think I'd ask the question, well, what have you done to get those fans? Because you know, I know the argument is, well, if you know, I know Steve's argument might be, well, I was told that if we got into Super League, the fans would come. We got into Super League, and then the fans said, well, we need to have a competitive team. We got a competitive team, and then they still didn't come. You know, we finished in the playoffs a couple of times, still didn't come. You know, they had Kevin Brown, whatever. So he's almost got to a point where it's like, well, I've done these things, and you know,
that's a fair argument, by the way.
Yeah, which is a fair argument. But then, like I say, my only real query to that is, well, what has the club done for that? And I just wonder now whether, because I don't think that, you know, if you look at Steve, I don't think that we should be expecting a person or several people to be pumping in loads of money all the time. Ultimately, you've got to, and in fairness, that is one of the things that you could perhaps credit the current regime for doing, is, as while as, you know, we're all complaining that not spending money, at least the club isn't as, you know, it's not in a terrible position debt-wise or whatever.
It's not, but you know, let's not forget, where you finish in the table is proportionate to your spend. And Widnes haven't spent anywhere near the salary cap in Super League. So the past couple of years, it almost seems like Steve's been a little bit disinterested. That might sound harsh, but I think that's the truth.
And I suppose that's the other question as well, is that there's no real reason why you shouldn't be spending the salary cap in Super League, because you get the entire salary cap in Sky funding anyway. So I think, I mean, just touching back on James Real, I think the worst thing probably James Real did was actually take shares, because effectively he's, you know, if he was just the CEO, he could have basically lent on the fact, well, the board aren't invested, so I'm a bit hampered. Whereas because he was part of the board, people are thinking, well, hang on, he's earning X amount of money, you know, as chief executive, but then at the same time not putting any money in as a board member. And so I think that probably, heightened the amount of animosity he got. And also, I think the other thing with Steve O'Connor is, it's not like he's not sat there taking money out. You know, according to the account, Steve O'Connor still owed £300,000 in director's loan,
Yeah.
but he isn't sat there taking X amount of pounds out in a salary every month.
Yeah, of course.
So that was sort of a bit like why I was thinking, well, if Steve O'Connor could steady the ship a little bit, maybe get somebody else in who can maybe freshen things up, I thought that might be the most obvious solution, but it would appear that maybe they're now fishing out to maybe attract Luke Backhouse or somebody else.
Yeah, well, someone's got to take over this kind of over the mantle and the direction of the club. I've yet to see some real clear statements from Steve to say it's going to be him. Probably statements to the contrary actually. So whether we see Luke Backhouse or a other figure come in, and I'm sure there'll be other interested parties, because Widnes is it's a good brand. It's a good club. You
got facilities, obviously.
Facilities are all there. All Borough Council have got the stadium, which is probably going to be deemed as some kind of drawback for any potential investor, because you want your own assets, you want your own kind of commercial activity, you want your own bums on seats, sales from the beer and the food and all that type of thing coming into the club and not going to a third party. Home Borough Council have been great for the town, and the rugby league club, but is that a relationship which is A1 at the moment? It's probably not.
We talked about that, I think, didn't we? Where that's one of the. I think I said my point was that there's two things that need to happen really. The fans now need to get behind the team again, and two, something's got to happen to improve this relationship with the council, because clearly there's a breakdown there between
And I think it needs to be said. People in Widnes, i.e. you and I, own part of that stadium because our council tax pays for it. So it's a taxpayer stadium. It belongs to the people of Widnes and Runcorn.
And ultimately, if Widnes Rugby owe the council money, they're effectively taken out of the purse of the people, if you like.
Absolutely. It's something which does need to be addressed. But let's not forget, it is a really good stadium. Is it all singing, all dancing Super League outfit like we see at Leeds? Probably not. But when we get back there, who's to say we can't do the big rugby league extravaganzas, if we can get my words out, and all the international fixtures what we used to have in the past.
Yeah, I mean, so obviously the situation now, and presumably, I've spoken to a few people sort of the last couple of days, and I believe that there's expectations that more stuff's going to happen, but the issue appears to be, certainly from speaking to Luke Backhouse, and also reading his tweets, is obviously this director's loan, the liabilities, if you like, of the club, which include a significant director's loan to Steve O'Connor. Now, obviously that's as per the latest accounts that we can see, so in theory he could have reduced, in this period of time.
Yeah.
Is it worth Luke Backhouse or anybody else coming in and paying 350 grand just to take over Widnes? Because as much as it's the name, the heritage, the license, whatever you want to call it.
Yeah, well, for me the answer to the question would be yes, because someone has got to do it. We believe Luke has got deep pockets and he's willing to kind of to put in, and if he's willing to do that, then let's see it. Let's see the proposal. Let's see the figures. I'm sure he'll be kind of number crunching with his accountants and putting a proposal together for Steve O'Connor, because something needs to happen. We can't be in a situation where the club becomes kind of rudderless, i.e. James moving on and before the season and we're in that state of limbo. I don't think that's fair to the club. I don't think it's fair to stakeholders. It's certainly not fair to the fans who are buying strong goals and trying to put their money into Widnes. We need someone to say, yeah, this is my money, and I'm putting it. This is what I'm putting into the club, and this is my objective, and this is where I'm going to get you. These are the intentions.
And there's obviously a lot of speculation all the time about various things, whether it be the Kevin Brown transfer fee, whether it be certain people's salaries. And while I don't expect complete transparency, has this regime almost become a victim of their lack of reasonable transparency in terms of, you didn't tell us how much you got for Kevin Brown, and you didn't really tell us where it's gone. We get sort of loose quotes and comments from James Rule in statements or in press which refer to it, but they never really, it's never quite black and white, and that's almost like come back to haunt them a little bit, because then it's meant that the whole rumour mill or speculation or the anger towards it just gets bigger and bigger.
I absolutely agree. There's been far too much grey in James Rule's tenure at the top. At first, I'm sure fans of it were really excited that Steve brought James in, but it's turned out. I'm
not sure about that.
Well, it's.
He was still banned from rugby league when Widnes took him.
There is that point, and I'm sure people in Hull have got another opinion, by the way, and anyone who's read Judas, Paul Cook's book, written by Adrian Durham and TalkSport, then they will get a view of what James is about, allegedly. But having said that, it wasn't all bad from James.
Not wrong.
There was some good bits, but there's probably too many bad bits which kind of outweigh the good stuff.
And I think to be fair, some of the and I guess the point I'm trying to make is, I guess some of the bad bits have almost been escalated.
Oh, they have.
Because of the lack of transparency around them in many ways. If he could have, like the whole Gelling situation could have been shut down weeks and weeks ago.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
As an example. One interesting sort of other point to throw into the mix was is how the club has been affected by the change from the licensing to promotion relegation. Because of course, when Steve O'Connor became involved, his first year was the last year that was promotion relegation, and then when in fact no, which 2008 was it? Oh yes, there was no promotion relegation that year. It was licensing. So every year since O'Connor took over. It's all been based on licensing up until 2014, and then since then it's changed. Does that coincide with the lack of interest, or rather the drop in interest from Steve O'Connor, perhaps?
I think that's got something to do with it. But I'd like to think there's a proper strategy behind all this. So we knew that the system was going to change from licensing to what it is prior to 2018. So for me that doesn't wash. They've got to
react to it.
Yeah, you've got to react to it.
As much as it's changing where the goalposts are.
Yeah, of course.
It's the same for everyone else.
Definitely. It's again. I think it just goes back to that kind of lack of transparency. The too many grey areas. Not so much the right communication, in my opinion. We've done some great stuff in the community, but which is fantastic, and I really approve of it. But what does that mean actually on the pitch? What does that mean on our gate? Are we getting more people through the doors? Are we getting a better squad because of it? Because ultimately we paid because we had the worst squad over the past 2 years, and that's through lack of investment, and lack of idea really. And just before you go on there, I think one person will be able to tell us all this, and it's not been mentioned yet, is Dennis Betts. I believe Dennis has promised John Lawless from Liverpool Echo an interview at some point, where he's going to hopefully lift the lid on some of this stuff, because Dennis has got a little bit of muck on his hands, because but on the other side of the coin is Dennis was only given the tools to do the job what he was given, so he was up against it.
I certainly think Dennis Betts' reputation has been affected by
it.
Yeah, definitely. And I think and there's still Widnes fans who don't rate him as a coach, and that might be a fair assumption. But I think that Dennis Betts is a far better coach than what Widnes fans give him credit for. And I think he's probably been fighting in, like you say, in this sort of context or whatever you want to call it around him. So it would, it'd be really interesting to see what.
Absolutely, that will be a scoop for whoever.
Maybe Dennis can come in here and sit on the sofa with us and speak to him. A couple of other things that have sort of cropped up this week, and they sort of tie into the licensing, they sort of tie into transparency. Danny Walker and Matt Whitley, two players that have come through Widnes' academy and left this year. Now, according to the RFL operational rules, etc., Widnes should receive compensation for both of these players because they offered them equivalent deals. There's an implication that on Twitter, and I've spoken to people at I've spoken to people at Warrington, I've spoken to people at Catalan, and, I've been given a figure by contacts at Warrington as to how much they've had to pay Danny Walker. Catalan have been a little bit more cagey around that sort of thing. If you go right by the book, if you go through the RFL operational rules and you try and work it out, I would expect anywhere in the region of 100,000 combined for them two players. Yeah. The implication is that there's nowhere near that amount gone in. But again, is the fact that we're having to answer these questions and wonder these questions another example of the transparency? Because again, you look at the central funding, the parachute payment. Yeah. We're told constantly that there's no money. But then at the same time, no one can really see where any money's going.
Well, maths is my strong point, but look at what we got last year. Apparently, we've got this £500,000 parachute payment from the RFL, which James voted for. So thank you very much, James, for that.
Yeah.
But then we've got £700,000, so that's 1.2 million. Add to your 150k. That's a nice little figure.
Yeah. Well, I mean, and obviously we don't expect the club to necessarily come out and give us everything, but I think they probably harmed themselves by being a bit, like you say, a bit cloak and dagger with it, because they could come out and say, right, look, this is how much money we've got, and obviously there's a bit of competitive advantage against other clubs, but I mean, I don't think it. The other clubs are presumably aware of what everyone gets in central funding anyway, so I don't see how it's a huge thing. I think I worked out before that since the Catalan game at the end of 2017 that Widnes won to survive, Widnes have released 24 players and signed 8.
That is an unbelievable stat. That kind of.
Do you know what I mean? And you're thinking, and as much as I understand, you've got academy players and stuff coming into the team. Well, the majority, there's not many of them academy players that weren't there in 2017.
Yeah.
And okay, they'll be earning more money, but something somewhere doesn't add up, because you're looking at 24 players have been released, and when we say 24, these aren't just run-of-the-mill players. You're looking at Chris Bridge, you're looking at Corey Thompson, you're looking at Reece Ambry, you're looking at Joe Mellor, you're looking at players who were probably in Widnes, but more to the point, in Widnes's big earnings.
Yes, yeah.
And you're thinking, well, okay, the Sky money's dropped, we get that.
Yeah.
But what's happening?
I know it's one which is left me really scratching my head, because these are big numbers. We know the likes of Reece, Etal were on big figures at Widnes. I think Reece ended up the top earner, so that's a significant salary which has gone into the black hole. And this is the thing. People are suspicious now, I'm afraid to say, because of what happened with Kevin's money.
Yeah.
So Widnes sold Kevin to Warrington, and we got major money for that. What happened to the money? And this will be forever linked to kind of James, his tenure at the club, because he never ever give us a straight answer about that.
Yeah, and I mean the other thing, and I understand that obviously there's difficulties, and there's a lot of things that we as outsiders aren't aware of in terms of your running costs. I know James Rules mentioned insurance and stuff like that, which we completely get. But every other rugby league club has got
a pitch.
Well, yeah. I mean, every rugby league club has got to contend with these exact same issues. Yeah. And how are we getting to the point where Widnes seems so far behind, if you like, everyone else in terms of a financial or competitive point, if you know what I'm trying to say?
Yeah, it's again, I don't run my own business, but I think it just comes down to that. But Widnes have got very, very capable people there, or so we're told. We've got a guy there now who's back involved, hopefully, Steve O'Connor, who's running a multi-million-pound business. So I'd like to think that Steve knows exactly what he's going to do with the club next.
Yeah. I think, and I guess everyone, the worry now is how is this going to impact on the team, and on Kieran Pirtle in particular. You don't want this to be dragging on and on and on, because ultimately the season's 2 months away. Yeah. And it's quite important.
Absolutely.
I mean, the rugby's the whole reason we're here. The whole reason we're sat here debating it was because of the rugby. We don't care about any of the other stuff at the bottom end.
Yeah. That's exactly it. But at Widnes at the moment, it just seems to me that the rugby's playing second fiddle to the off-the-field sideshow, which is really disappointing because end of the day, we're all Widnes fans, we're all rugby league fans, and that's the stuff you want to be talking about. You don't want to be talking about the financials, the kind of poor running and administration of the club. You want to be talking about Widnes getting back up to Super League, which is where they belong, and give Kieran the tools to build a good team. I feel for Kieran at the moment because he's gone from Leigh, and it's like the case of out of the frying pan and into the fire at Widnes. And Widnes is a far more stable club than Leigh. I'll say that, but he'll be thinking, am I going? Yeah, what have I got myself into it? Am I going to go around again? I'm sure he isn't, by the way, but it's got to be concern for him. He just wants to focus on the rugby league. But I'm sure at the back of his mind he's thinking,
what's going to go on?
Who's going to come on? Is that person going to fancy me? Is he going to give me a break? Am I going to be out within 3 months if I don't get the right results? It's all that type of stuff, which unfortunately does happen. It happens more in football than rugby league, but there'll be a trigger point somewhere.
And then the other point to all this is that we still think that Widnes need 3, 4, 5 players, and it's like, is that now going to become? Is that something that's going to happen now? Because ultimately it's going to be left to, with all the other stuff going on, is that's going to go down the list of priorities maybe? And I suppose you could say, well, why would they risk money or whatever on signing more players if they're going to sell the club?
And this is why this needs to be sorted out sooner rather than later. If Steve's going to leave, if someone's going to come in and give him the £300,000 to say bye, and that the whole directorship, and I'm led to believe, goes. So that's your Munsons, your Brian O'Connors, Roddy Snedden, I believe. We can only say those names because they're the people on the board. So if Luke Backhouse or another person comes in and says there's £300,000, I take it those individuals will actually leave the club and Luke will bring his own people in, or whoever it may be. But that all needs to happen soon, so we can get on with the rugby league and the bit which why we're sat around this table.
Yeah, I mean, it certainly doesn't sound like something that's going to happen in 2 months, unfortunately. Which then you've got to think, well, how can they? I suppose we're just going to have to sit tight and see.
Absolutely, and you do have to be careful what you wish for. We have seen in rugby league, at certain clubs, both sides of the Pennines, where clubs have had their hands kind of burnt because that person wasn't the right individual. And I'm not saying that about anyone interested in Widnes, particularly Luke, because he's a really credible businessman. However, it has gone before.
Yeah, I think, like I said, I think I'm certainly on the fence with, whether it needs someone to come in. Does it need someone to come in and throw loads of money at it, or does it just need someone to? I don't think necessarily that Steve O'Connor was a million miles away from what he needed to be doing. They've just completely. I think it's more the relationships with fans and sponsors that, if they'd have been managed better, the club would probably be in a far better position than it is now. And so that's where I agree. You look at Derek Beaumont, you look at Kukas. They chuck loads of money at players and they've not got anywhere. And it's like, well, there's no point in us doing that as well. But obviously, the way that things are being run at the moment clearly isn't.
Well, we've gone backwards.
Exactly.
We have gone backwards. Both on the field and off the field. But you look at those first 2 or 3 years when Steve was there. Bright-eyed and bushy-tailed. He came with his money and he pumped millions into the club, which you credit to him. He saved the club from absurdity. The club's on its knees. So we've got to say that for the record.
Well, and also worth remembering the investment that he put in. Rejected it in 2008 for the licence, but then he could have walked away. But he stayed. They invested in the academy, and I know we touched on this last week. They invested in the academy for 3 years in Championship, 4 years in total in the Championship, and it's like now they're sort of reaping the rewards, or trying to reap the rewards of that.
Yeah, and good things do come to an end, unfortunately, and it is now the right time to kind of hand over the reins to somebody else with a little bit more energy. I think it's common knowledge Steve's in Australia or wants to be based in Australia now. You can't run a rugby league club from down under in Sydney, or when the hard yards and the rolling up the sleeves need to be done in Widnes, particularly in this situation at the moment.
Yeah, I mean, you might have seen I did a piece with Michael Carter, the Wakefield chairman, earlier this week, and he's a good example, I suppose, of the sort of person that a small I mean, I know Wakefield's a city, but you know what I mean,
Yeah,
like
yeah,
a small town club needs, you know, even the picture of him is him shoveling the snow off the pitch, you know, when Widnes played there, and
his hands on it.
you know, and it's like, I think, is that the problem? There's not enough money to have a board who then employ, you know, a big executive. They almost need to sort of merge that somehow into something better. Ian, thanks for coming in again.
No problem.
Hopefully you won't be here. Well, I say hopefully you're not going to be here next week because you're on your jollies, but hopefully there won't be as many dramas next week, and you won't be back. But yeah, thanks for watching. Let us know what you think. Hopefully we may see some movement and some news over the coming days, certainly on the player front, but we'll see. I have approached the club about maybe speaking to James Rule and Steve O'Connor, but unfortunately not at this time was the response. So I'll sort of keep, you know, obviously I'm always open to sitting down with anyone, so hopefully at some point in the future we'll get someone of that ilk onto the show to maybe give a bit more of the transparency perhaps, or answer some of the questions that maybe have rumbled on a bit too much in terms of, you know, a bit like Chinese whispers in some respects. So keep an eye out for that. Please do share, like, subscribe, comment to the channel, and we'll be back next week. Thanks for watching.